I mean, we thought of this, actually, it was, Liz and I were just chatting when the beloved Elizabeth Langland was retiring yet again. We thought, wow, I mean, there were, of course, a lot of staff there, including Lincoln Center staff and some of the former IHR staff, and we thought, wow, there's so much talent among our staff pool, which we all know, of course, and recognize privately and when we can publicly. But there are also a lot of complexity to this problem of being both an academic, having the academic role and then having these staff roles. And this might be both a way of recognizing and working through some of the complexities of that life. So anyway, I'll take over. So thank you.
Thank you, Ron, and thank you all for being here. It's great to be back with you all, and I hope everyone is sharing in the new sense of possibility each new academic year brings. We're delighted to have Liz, Leah, Chan, and Erica for today's conversation. And it's been a pleasure learning about their work in the lead up to today's event. So I'm really excited for you to hear about it soon as well. I'll introduce them momentarily. But as before, still now, a few housekeeping items to start. For those here in person, we have printed flyers for our fall program and a sign-in. That's on that side of the table. And if you just sign in and then circulate down the road, that would be great. For those on Zoom, my colleague Mina Lejavardi has already linked you to the digital version of the flyer in the chat, so look for that. And please know that almost all our events are accessible in person and online. We look forward to welcoming you in whatever modality best suits your needs. And today's is the start of a really thoughtfully designed full year's conversation. So please come back for more as the IHR continues to engage with what it means to be human in a constantly changing world. Reach out to us anytime. We are here to support your work. In the course of today's event, you'll hear from our speakers, followed by time for open discussion. For Zoom participants, we encourage you to use either the chat function or Q&A. Both should now be enabled to share the space. For in-person participants, please be sure to project your voice as best you can to make it audible and transcribable in the closed caption for our hybrid participants. Now to introduce today's speakers. Joining us via Zoom is Dr. Erica O'Neill, a scholar committed to advancing co-creative participatory strategies to engage ethical innovation. She manages research development and projects in the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics, an organization focused on advancing humane technology as a concept to empower the ethical management of technology, aligning tech with human values, and rejecting the exploitation of tech users presently on offer. Alongside this critical work, Dr. O'Neill teaches classes on the human impacts of artificial intelligence as a member of the Responsible Artificial Intelligence Curriculum Design Project funded by both the National Humanities Center and Google. Chen Wei is Senior Program Coordinator at the Asia Center. She holds a master's in public health with a concentration in health services administration and has taught Burmese language both here at ASU and at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She is involved in multiple projects, including proficiency assessment and material development for less commonly taught languages, and education reform after the military coup in Myanmar. Chen is currently working on a thesis for the Bioethics Law and Policy program at ASU, examining the critical nexus of biological citizenship and ethno-nationalism. Born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona, Leah Newsom holds an MFA in creative writing from Arizona State University. She teaches fiction across form, theory, and practice for the creative writing area in the English department and serves as manager of marketing and communications at the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies. Leah's work exploring climate, being in the desert, relationality, and I would call the haunting presence of creatureliness as I've come to know it, has appeared in Conjunctions, Ninth Letter, Juked, Passages North, and more. And finally, Liz Grumbach is manager for digital humanities and research for the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics. She has been active in the digital humanities community for over 10 years, working as an academic professional for organizations such as the Advanced Research Consortium, HASTAC, and the Institute for Humanities Research. Grumbach is currently serving a 3-year term on the Executive Council for the Association for Computers in the Humanities and is co-PI on the recently awarded NEH grant on understanding algorithmic folk theories. Her work has appeared in such scholarly venues as Digital Humanities Quarterly, Digital Scholarship in the Humanities, and the Journal on Computing and Cultural Heritage. So, now a prompt to get us started. Everyone, please begin by telling us a bit about how your journey and how you came to be a higher education worker who does the work you do now.
Should we go alphabetically?
Oh no, then I have to think alphabetically.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Chen. Nice to have you all here, and thank you Ron and Jacob and Victoria for organizing this event and making it happen. We're very, very grateful for this opportunity. How did I get to higher education? It's a long journey, but I was going through this MPH program at University of Arizona while ASU needed a Burmese language instructor. So while I was in the master program, I started teaching a course here at ASU on intermediate Burmese language. And after I graduated from ASU, I got a job offer in Wisconsin, and I did not want to move there because it was so cold. And my family's here, and I was so glad that there was an opening at the Asia Center for this position, and Professor Schober offered me the position. I've been here ever since. So that's how I got into the higher education or this position that I'm in.
Hi, I'm Leah, and again, thanks to everybody. I'm sure we're all going to go around and say the exact same thing, but I appreciate everyone for being here and for listening to us talk about this. So I'm a creative writer, and when I decided to go to school for creative writing, I was sort of like I think it took me 8 years to finish my undergrad. I was an on and off dropout in community college, and because I was trying to do something other than creative writing, because there's no money in creative writing, which is true, but also I was concerned about like having a real job, and then I gave up and just followed my instincts and did the creative writing thing. But in the meantime, I also got a lot of experience working for a branding agency and doing marketing, because again, no money in creative writing, must have day job, must figure out something else to do. So I worked at a branding agency doing marketing and copywriting, and it turns out that creative writing is not a bad skill for a marketer. It's actually quite transferable, and thinking about how we tell stories to engage people is everything that a marketer does. So I ended up going down sort of like two paths. I went to grad school, also still doing marketing while I was in grad school, but getting my MFA. And so really, since I was an undergrad, and since the realities that I think fiction doesn't really pay unless you're Brian Sanderson, you really have to go sort of like down two career paths simultaneously. I'm just fortunate that when I was in grad school, I had made the decision to market at ASU, first at the IHR, and then with the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies, because it felt like if I had to do marketing somewhere, it should be somewhere where, not only am I not doing any active harm to the world, which may not be true of other marketing, but that I'm like intellectually engaged with a scholarly and an artistic community.
That was so beautiful.
Thanks, Liz.
Now I have to follow it. Hi, I'm Liz. Jake, thank you so much for everything you've done to organize this. Ron, it feels so great to have this panel come to kind of fruition after our conversation. I think the spirit of Elizabeth Langland is in this conversation too, so just thanks. Elizabeth in Florida, they just went through a hurricane. And just the entire IHR, Victoria, thank you. And I'm going to stop the thanks there. I'm like on a gratitude train at the end of the week, so yeah. So my journey has been interesting. This is the second higher education institution that I've worked for. I've been doing this going on 11 years now, so over 10 years. I started because I met this amazing woman, Dr. Laura Mendel, in the final semester of my master's. And she was an early modernist, and I was training to be an early modernist. And I was also getting my Digital Humanities certificate because it combined a lot of the things that I loved about technology and kind of the future of higher education, and this thing that I was super interested in, which was, early modern, actually mothers and daughters, if anyone ever wants to talk about that. And I had the opportunity to then work for Dr. Mendel as a full-time academic professional on a Mellon-funded grant called the Early Modern OCR Project. So I got to work with this really amazing international team of scholars on book history and teaching computers how to read early modern fonts, which was this really cool problem. And then after that grant ended, I stayed at Texas A&M University, and my career kind of developed into this kind of two-pronged career. One was I got to do a lot of research in that center that I worked for, and then I also got to do the kind of facilitation of research in digital humanities across the humanities and computer science and anthropology and archaeology and all of these disciplines that I didn't know a lot about, but I knew enough about DH to talk to them about their projects, which was really exciting for me. And I've been thinking a lot, so I brought this little workbook that my colleague Hannah Alpert Abrams put out about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, because she talks about lineages instead of genealogies in academia, so how we've gotten to where we are and our lineages of the people and the things that brought us to where we are. And I've mentioned some of those people, and some of those people are actually sitting on this panel and in this room. And so I think that the journey through higher education for me has been about the communities that have formed and the people that I have met and wanted to work for. And that is not where I meant that introduction of what I do. That's not where I meant for it to go, but apparently I'm on a gratitude train. But that has led me to do really amazing things at the IHR with some of the folks in this room, and also now at the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics. Sarah Florini, who is here, and Erica O'Neill and I have this amazing grant right now to work with TikTok content creators to think about the ways in which they understand algorithmic governance and the ways that it affects their lives. And that seems like a continuation of kind of the passion I have for connecting with communities as they relate to how we understand the world. And what Jake said in the introduction, like how we are being human in a constantly changing world, that's so beautifully put that I had to say it again. So I'll stop there because I think we're going to talk more about all of those things. And Erica hasn't gone yet.
That's my cue. It's lovely to see you all from afar. Thank you for being able to pivot to this modality to accommodate a very contagious variant that I did not intend on capturing, but I can add it to my roster of viruses under my belt now. I started off on a really academic track. So after coming to ASU as a PhD student in the Center for Biology and Society, I began a postdoc in the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics, and then transferred to the role of associate, what is the terminology? It's a faculty track role, associate research professional, instead of a staff role. But I was doing a lot of the things, both in that postdoc, where I was doing a lot of community outreach and engagement, along with research, and including research development, so where it is, that I was doing for the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics, because it was in the process of transferring to become a more research active center, instead of a more faculty support center. And so in that position, I was allowed to kind of craft a faculty track position that included a lot of staff roles already in it. So it was a natural next step when I moved to a staff position in the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics. Not too much changed in terms of the workload, but I was allowed to continue with some of the things that I had already found a passion for, which is some of that developmental and administrative work of getting things done, in addition to doing some of the knowledge creation and grant finding and being able to work with others creatively in those contexts. Yeah. forward to the conversation today. Thank you for organizing.
All right, so let's jump right in. And sort of a second place to go after the journey that brought us to where we are would be to engage, right, the work we're doing now. So yeah, I was hoping our panelists could just speak a little bit to what does professionalization look like for you in the capacity you're working?
I can go. Okay, so I talked a little bit about some of the work that I'm doing now, and I think one of the things that I have been meditating on in preparation for this panel is I was very privileged maybe to come up in the digital humanities discipline because collaboration and community-centeredness and things like, I wrote down some words, but I'm not ever going to be able to find them. But also, I came up in a time where Quitlit was really, really popular, and the kind of rise of alternative academia as a thing was really, really popular, and that seemed so incredibly interesting to me because it was a way for me to take the passion that I had for research and also do these things that I was really, really good at. That I felt were about fostering community and about fostering like the facilitation of things that I didn't know a lot about, but like I could put my hands in and I could see like bear fruit, right? So I think professionalization for me has meant like thinking about how project management skills are transformed when we take them into higher education. When we take them out of kind of the context of well, everything's capitalism, unfortunately. But I think when we take them out of the context of like startup culture and put them into higher education, and one of the things that Erica and I are working on now is a project management of care, so care-based project management. What does that look like? Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. But you know, professionalization also means for me, in addition to all of those things I do in that part of my job, things like that are more traditionally seen as service. So I'm on the executive council of this organization called the ACH, and this summer I organized an international virtual conference, right? I was the program chair. And that kind of professionalization is very, very important to me, but how it relates to my job is kind of like ephemeral. Like I'm supposed to be doing digital humanities in my job, but is that the digital humanities I'm supposed to be doing? I'm not sure, so I did a lot of that work at night and on the weekends. The other kinds of things that I do to kind of professionally develop, as I'm currently right now working with someone in this room to get project management professional certified. So those kinds of skills, I'm trying to learn how folks talk about those things in different contexts and bring them into the higher ed world that I live in. The other kinds of things I think I was yeah, we could talk about hybridity too. So I think I was talking a little bit of about hybridity and what that means. But I think what's so cool about my job is that at ASU, and this wasn't true in my last institution, and it's why I sought to come to ASU, staff can be PIs and they can be project leads, and that's not something that's true at every university. It certainly wasn't true at the previous university that I worked for. So there are a lot of opportunities for staff here that I think we can really engage ourselves in the research world. So I'll stop there because I think maybe other folks might have things to chat about too.
Yeah, I'm so interested. I think the word professionalization is a word that like gives me a tiny panic attack. If only because creative writing has, while it has professional it has a professional organization, there are people who are professors, there are practitioners of it that are deemed professional. The like lines between those things are really gray and fuzzy, and I think that 90% of being a professional creative writer is being a person who writes, and one who presumably publishes it, right? So professionalization in creative writing is a really solitary act, as opposed to, like Liz is talking about all these amazing collaborations and getting to sort of conduct research within the place that you also work, and that hybridity question. Less of that in, I am not really like writing novels while I'm sending tweets, right? And so it's interesting to think about that. I mean, I do teach creative writing and I do, go to conferences, and I feel like very much a part of the creative writing community in Arizona, but that's a very different and distinct community and a very different and distinct profession from pre-modern studies, right? And so again, going down like 2 tracks, my professionalization in pre-modern studies is not as a pre-modernist, right? And it's very vehemently not as a pre-modernist. And I like whatever professionalization that occurs as a marketer occurs through the work and through the work that we produce at ACMRS, which I sort of envy Liz in that the things cross over a little bit more. But my experience of being a professional in either of these careers feels very like, I don't know, self-made in some capacity.
Yeah, I think I agree with Leah in that sense that professionalism and professional, I think it's more than just titles and certifications that we receive. I think it's also the things that we do on the everyday basics, on the mundane level. So some of the things that I do, I can't even put a title on it. For example, I'm working with a group of people at ASU and Ministry of Education in Myanmar on how to access higher education, how to do equitable access, and how do you even navigate a federalism and democratic education in a post-coup ethnic, war-torn country. So those are some of the things that I do, but I don't have a professional position, right, in order to do that. But this is some of the projects that I'm passionate about. That's the same thing with some of the things that we do. When we say program coordinator, that's the title that we see, right? But that means I have other duties and responsibilities that I complete. I'm pretty sure all the staff members here can recognize that, which is you do media and communication, you do event coordination, you deal with your students on everyday basics, right? You maintain websites, you deal with faculty members and try to mediate these relationships. So there's a lot of, I guess, tasks and duties that we do that doesn't have a title. And does it mean that we don't have a professional, or we don't have a professionalism in our everyday tasks? So that's some of the things that I wanted to bring up in this panel.
Before Erica goes, I have to say, you said something that I wrote down so big in my notes, which is like value in the mundane, right? Because I think so much of what we do as staff, as professionals, as academic staff, whether it's research or not research, or research related, or sending emails, right? Or coordinating these big, huge projects that have such amazing impact, right? And I think all of us do that. We put value in the mundane, but I wonder how much of that value is seen. So maybe we can pick that up later. That would be cool. Thank you.
So building on some of the things that all of you have mentioned, there's professionalization in the sense of being able to figure out what the metrics are of your engagement. So what are you going to conferences if you're a part of research? Are you publishing? Are you teaching a certain number of students? What is your feedback on that? So there's really traditional sort of academic professionalization metrics, but I also feel like ones that have arisen as a staff member that I didn't anticipate at first. We're being able to develop a language to go across the different types of folks that I'm working with to keep this sort of group collaboration efforts together. Because administrators, staff, students, and faculty all have very different priorities and different languages that they tend to speak. And being able to understand, sort of as a professional in that role, how I can accommodate and translate across those different boundary distinctions, I think has been really valuable. And it's part of that ethics of care as a project manager that Liz mentioned previously. That she and I are both pursuing traditional academic professionalization credit for by publishing on it in an IDH special issue later on. And we just presented at a conference on that for project managers as well. So there are professionalization opportunities out there that are sort of adjacent to some of these fields, but more attuned to the project management or collaborative or coordinating work that we all seem to do.
So I really want to continue to pick up on this thread of the sort of recognizing the invisibility of this kind of work, right? And figuring out what naming that invisibility might be, because I think there's a power in once something's named, like it can enter into this sort of economy of care that defines, I think, what all our centers and institutes are engaged with. So yeah, how do you all go about, or perhaps not, navigating the sort of visibility of immediate work and then the invisibility of perhaps your more capacious, critical and creative endeavors?
I think for me, all right, so I'll use sort of an example from ACMRS that I think best demonstrates sort of the invisible influence I've had on something. So we have a semi-annual symposium called Race Before Race that happens at ACMRS, and it is also sort of a growing kind of snowball beast of its own professional organization. It is a mentorship network. It is content creation. It is a whole thing. This whole team here is working on a $3.5 million Mellon grant to make sure that everything that is Race Before Race is like well known. But when Race Before Race started, it was me and our director, Ayanna Thompson, trying to put on an event that we thought maybe 30 people would go to. And I just set out to use like whatever skills I had working at the branding agency. I was like, let's make this a thing. Like, let's make it a big thing. Let's make it a, visually appealing. The term I always use is sexy, but I don't mean it in a sexual way, but like in a marketing sexy way. Like, let's do it. Let's just go as far as we can. And, Race Before Race since then has become a massively influential, push in pre-modern studies to think about race as a viable lens of inquiry, which, it wasn't prior to Race Before Race really in that field. And I don't want to say, because I know, we very smart people and academics in the room like to think of ourselves as immune to marketing. But I do think part of the appeal of Race Before Race was its sort of informal, it's casual, it's forward-looking branding, right? And that's not work that, it's not like Race Before Race brought to you by Leah Newsom, right? But like, thankfully not. But I do think that like just some of those branding decisions and some of the like very smart decisions that have happened collaboratively by the staff in inventing the space and to give platform to these incredible scholars and their amazing work is part of what made that as big as it was. And, for me as a marketer, the people who work on marketing largely are invisible, right? And it's kind of the point, right? It's, we put the brand up and let it speak for itself. So, I mean, to me, that invisible labor is also part of the function of the job. But it is worth noting that by virtue of its invisibility, there is like sort of a lack of attention on the staff and the people who put that thing together.
Mm-hmm. So you say you weren't collaborating, but you collaborate all the time.
You're
a collaborator. You're a collaborator. I think that there's some, well, first of all, Race Before Race is amazing. If you haven't been, please go. Most of the people in this room have been, though, I think. And I don't know where to even pick up from that because it was such a powerful example, but I think I'm struck by the kind of challenge to recognize and name what is invisible and who it's invisible to. Because I think if am I going to be back on my gratitude train? Maybe. I mean, maybe it's about, it's about not only being, not only acknowledging that it's happening, but publicly acknowledging or like understanding or recognizing. And that's at like the supervisor level, right? That's at the team level, that's at the event level, right? One of the great things that, in my experience of Race Before Race, there's always a moment in Race Before Race where the team that put together the event is acknowledged.
Yeah, that's true.
And that doesn't happen all the time at events. And maybe that's something that y'all have done as well, that is a model for I don't know, the recognition of the work that goes into academic work that is not research. Because I would say Race Before Race is academic work. And there's a lot of research that goes into it, but not all of it is research. I'll stop there. I might have more to say later.
Go ahead, Erica.
I'll add on to some of that, because both of you hit on collaboration, and there is so much invisible work in herding cats across any sort of collaboration at ASU, with schedules and trying to make sure that meetings happen, with making sure that everyone's voices are heard and that they're recognized for the things that they're doing. That invisible work, if you don't have a deft hand with it, those collaborations aren't sustainable, and they're really hard to keep going, especially the work that we do in the Lincoln Center around co-creation and participatory action research, where we're really trying to engage community members in this, have totally different priorities, timelines, and expectations around the scale and the ability that they're able to contribute to these sorts of discussions. So meeting folks where they're at and understanding that has really helped me to also do that in my own role as a staff member, interfacing with faculty, interfacing with students, interfacing with different staff members and their roles. So figuring out how to do that and do it well is difficult, because a lot of it goes unrecognized and invisible, but when it goes well, you can feel it. And you have a really good team cohesion, you have a really great event like you're speaking about with Race Before Race, because everything just kind of, all that invisible labor that you put into it in those like untold hours really pay off in the end, and you have something that is sustainable and that people look forward to time and time again. And that helps with your brand too, because you're reliable and you've demonstrated that through that engagement. So
Erica, I'm just gonna, oh, yeah. Sorry, Erica, please go. I cut you off. Okay, I think you said go ahead, I heard you. I just wanted to point that one of the things that Erica is describing, I think, is that we do these things called design studios in the Lincoln Center. And this is, I think, a really amazing example of the staff team at the Lincoln Center, all of our team, leadership, our staff team, everyone. We do these design studios where we take weeks and weeks and weeks of careful work. Like, I put together a literal cue sheet that goes by like the minutes of what we're doing in those 2-hour design studios that we have with people, so that we can hold that space, we can structure that space, right, Erica? So that people can enter into it and have an experience, and it can be so generative, and they can come away with what we call beautiful questions. And it's that work is invisible, but you can feel it, and that's so important. Thank you for saying the feel, Erica.
I think I want to take the conversation to a different direction, which is there's power in visibility. And when a lot of the bulk of your work is invisible, it's harder for other people to appreciate, other coworkers, or maybe your supervisors. So I think it's important to lay it out there. Another component that I wanted to point out is we are here, for 8 hours a day, right? We also have life, and we're not individuals that lives alone. We have community, we have family, and there are invisible work that you do in your community as well. So an example that I was talking about during our meeting on Monday was my parents are immigrants. They don't speak English very well, so that means that on the weekends, or even when I'm off, I have to go to the office to translate for them, because they don't have interpreters for my language. So that means that there's a responsibility that I do that's invisible to other people. So I think it's really important to point out the invisible things that we do in the community. And why it's important to point out those invisibility is because there's power in it. Once people know more about the responsibilities that we have as staff member, as family members, as community members, then they will understand more about what we do in our life, not as researchers and staff that they see on everyday basis, but we also have a life outside of this, in our cubicle, in our office, or on campus. So I think that's really important for people to know, because if, when we talk about care, community care, it's also important to highlight those elements that we do. The invisibility needs to be highlighted so that people can appreciate each other more. So I think that's the direction that I would go to say, yes, it's nice to have ASU to be more visible and you take a step back and the events to be more successful. But I think in the backstage, there's a lot of work that needs to go in. And I think, people should recognize that as well. And we, or the staff, needs to be recognized for their hard work. So I think that's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree. I think, there's Liz asked the question earlier about the invisibility too, right? And so I kind of want to think about how does this function within the culture of one's team or one's office, right? So I think, for me, Race Before Race as a thing I work on in a sort of invisible capacity, I do like the step back from it in a public sense, right? In the attendees and the scholars that are sort of a part of it, but within my office, right? And we think about communities of care. I have a toddler. That toddler goes to school with Ruben's toddler and Eduardo's toddler, and our lives are frequently dictated by the whims of the toddlers, and the care that they require, and but also, the work that we do is so transparent in our center, and there's so much acknowledgement of sort of everyone's contributions and how everyone's lives are a part of what they do. And I feel very fortunate to work in a center that has that culture. But, frankly, not every place at ASU, nor certainly every place in academia, has a culture that is perhaps so informal or is so personal, or that it acknowledges, I don't know, the lives, the well-being, and the, not just research, but personhood of the people that work there, right? So how does that change? I don't know, but I think much of the acknowledgement of invisible labor is a practice of the culture of the people that you work with, that's curated culture, right? That's top down.
I had written something in my notes that follows so closely from what y'all said, where there's this there's this joke now, right? That we don't need pizza lunches, we need raises, right? Yeah. But I think in addition to, we don't necessarily need pizza lunches, we also need to be recognized as persons, as whole people, as folks that, have lives outside of the office, right? So there's a recognition of personhood that also please raises and promotions, right? Please. But also, I think that it's so important to understand that, especially as folks that do work in academia and produce scholarship and amazing creative writing and other things, we also have communities, we also have families, we also have these other aspects of our job, and I have a whole list of the things that I do, right, that are not research oriented, and I think we were discussing things when we met up on Monday, sometimes the air conditioner breaks and we have to spend an entire afternoon trying to figure out that the air conditioner is broken, right, and that's part of our job. So I think, I'll stop there, because I think that acknowledgement of personhood is just so important. Thank you, both.
So on that note of acknowledgement and personhood, I can see that we've got 4 points in the chat, and we've got a little less than 15 minutes in the session. So I want to open things up to broader discussion.
This has just been uploaded to the wonderful people we got here and to work they do.
It's so good to see you.
So one of the things I would ask is, well, I have a lot of questions because obviously being in a community, working with staff is, I think about this a lot. And it's what are the kinds of things, I think ending with this question of personhood is really important. And so pushing that further, what are the kinds of things you would like to see either directors of centers or deans of the university be able to do and enable to further the wholeness of your engagement, both as staff member and as a researcher?
I think just embracing your role as both researcher and staff. I'm fortunate that, I enrolled myself in another master program at ASU, Bioethics, Law and Policy, so that's where you were at, Erica. So when I have classes, I have a flexible schedule that I can go to my classes. But there are also times where there's a conflict. For example, if we have a huge meeting coming up with important people, right? My schedule will be the one that has to budge. That means I will miss classes, and I will have to talk to my professors. Look, I'm both staff and this, and I'm the only person at the center. Some professors can understand, some don't. But you just take it, on your chin. But I would just say I'm lucky enough to have this flexibility in work, and also the support that I have from my immediate boss. But being said, that being said, I think there are some challenges I have when I have a lot of things going on all at once. I'm a master's student, I'm also doing research, I'm a staff member, and I'm in different projects. There's a Myanmar education project. I'm actually a team lead for Southeast Asian Language Council for Laos, Khmer, Burmese, and Hmong. So that's 4 different languages, 3 of which I don't even speak. So when those projects come all at once, it's put a real pressure on my schedule, and it has been really challenging, and it would be nice to have a little extra help. I'm being honest, a little extra help with some of my responsibility or duties. I think that would be one thing that I would say on this panel. Yeah.
That's a great question, Ron, and I appreciate you asking it. I think I do feel very fortunate that the center that I work in spends a lot of time supporting and caring for my well-being, and also the work that I do outside of the center. Ayanna Thompson is an amazing person to work for, and she very much not just speaks but lives the mentality of lifting as you climb, right? And I think that she shows that with her staff every day. So if there is an opportunity for her to introduce me to someone in her network, she will do it. If there's an invitation for, or an ability for her to invite me to publish alongside her, that will happen, right? I think she uses her resources to support the people around her, and that's not just her graduate students. And I think that kind of personal investment in the work that we're doing is powerful, right? And it's necessary, frankly. So for me, it's really about how can center directors not only be great leaders and visionaries of the work that center is doing, but how can they be mentors, leaders, and facilitators of the growth of the people that work with them.
Erica, would you like to go?
Sure. Picking up on that, because I feel what both of you are saying in my own role and position, the leadership that we have at the Lincoln Center right now, Gaiman Bennett and Sarah Carini do a great job of ensuring that whenever possible, they're attending to the human embodied needs of the folks who are working with them. So like you had mentioned, depending on what your schedule is, being flexible about deadlines and deliverables, trying to reach out and equalize a lot of those power hierarchies and open up networks, like you were talking about as well, is something that has been really helpful. Being a co-PI on a project with both Sarah and Liz at the moment, like giving folks the recognition as full collaborators whenever possible is one way of allowing people into those spaces, and also demonstrating the recognition for a lot of that invisible work that we were talking about, and how much labor really goes into sustaining project management outside of just sort of the knowledge enterprise, and being a part of it is in that aspect, but trying to make sure the project is on track and continues to go forward is also a heavy investment. So being recognized for those sort of accomplishments is also something that's really valued and appreciated.
I knew Eric would have something beautiful to say, so I wanted her to go first. Thank you. I think that I would just add, because everything that y'all have said, I agree with, right? I think that's exactly the kind of support. And I think too that most of us on this panel are kind of speaking from positions of almost privilege in the academy because we have such amazing support, right? Everyone can always have more, right? More understanding, more support, more, et cetera. But I think that something that I have gotten throughout my career, from Texas A&M through all of the many places that I've worked at ASU and beyond, in my kind of professional networks as well, is that there's always a discussion of where I want to go. And that's so important, and I don't know that every administrator at any level always kind of thinks about that when it comes to staff. Because not all staff want to do research, but all staff do want to professionally develop. And understanding and talking to folks about their career goals or their track or how they want to develop as both professionals, but also as people too, like what's super important to you in your life. I have been so lucky to get that from everyone that I've worked with, and I like to think that I hopefully have given that to the folks that I have supervised as well, because that's the kind of thing that really transforms higher education, is if you have one amazing administrator that you work for that really cares about your career and how it can develop, and then also you as a person and how you see your role in life and in the university, then that's something that you can then pass along to the folks that come up after you. I think that was just adding to the beautiful things that folks said, though. Thank you all.
So I saw out of the corner of my eye we had a question from the IHR's Consortium of Humanities Centers and Institutes Associate Director, the university, George Mason University, Cassie Oline had a question.
Yeah, just a question. Here's her question. She said, do you think the administrative team and the project management work you discussed is truly invisible, or maybe just not well understood or valued by academics or the university?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a spicy question. I like it. Well, I do think that there's something to be said for the the vast majority, at least for me in the humanities, I cannot speak outside of my very tunnel-visioned realm, but the vast majority of leadership in the humanities are coming from faculty positions who are researchers, and they're educators and they're researchers, right? So in terms of like skill sets that are coming to the table in staff positions, right? We were in a staff meeting the other day, and Taylor kept talking about color correction and something about gamma, and there's an acknowledgement that like Taylor has technical skills that that frankly very few people have. Certainly, I would be stunned if administrators at ASU have those skills, and so I don't know about like not valued, but certainly perhaps invisible due to like just a lack of knowledge, right? And there's so many skills like in the world of marketing or in the world of research, not facilitating but administrating, right? I think that these things are sort of unknown because they need not to be known, but it does include that like what could be a very difficult task might seem like it should be simpler or take less time, or you know, like why isn't this thing done yet? Oh, I have to like pixel by pixel edit this image in order to do it, right? And so I think, you know, one of the great things that leadership can do, in my experience, is acknowledge where they don't have expertise, right? We are not experts in everything. And I think, you know, if that can be acknowledged, and then we can acknowledge that our staff does have that expertise, and allowing them to employ that expertise and have agency over that expertise is probably a way to get around that question of invisibility or of value.
Can I add something to your point? And previously you did it. Maybe it will help to reimagine the position of staff in the environment of the organization. You beautifully articulated those innovative spaces that you all already created, kind of like this is invisible work and responsibilities. I have experienced this Liz, how she really offers her time to edit proposal or to organize this fabulous conference that really opened another world for me researchers and also PhD students and stuff. But those spaces are important for us as staff to develop ourselves, to prove our expertise, to be kind of in this institution the person innovation. So if administration recognizes need for creating those spaces, not only for faculty and students, but for staff as well, I think this is what really happening, kind of grassroots. Not that way, but if we meet in the middle, it will really contribute to and benefit the organization and everyone. Yeah. Thank you again for listening.
That was beautifully
And
said.
thank you for starting this conversation. I see.
That was so beautiful. I can't add anything to it. Thank you.
You said that.
Just more questions.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the other question? What would your advice be to those who are entering academia for the first time and are figuring out how to establish their career in a sustainable way?
Mm-hmm. That's another spicy one. So I get asked this. I get asked this a lot in digital humanities, just because I have an MA in literature, and then I got a job, and now I'm 11 years into this DH career, right? And I think the only answer to the question that I think has ever helped anyone or myself is you talk to as many people in the university, in your university as possible, and then other universities. So whenever I get asked this question, I usually say, do you want to have a call in 3 weeks? Like, do you want to, can I, let's talk about who's in your network and who's not in your network, right? That you might want to connect with. So I think that, when I was starting out in my career, I was like, I have to connect to every early modernist that I can possibly get my hands on, and that's how I'm going to professionally develop. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to connect to everyone that's doing digital humanities in early modernism. And then what I found out really quickly is that, like, actually that's really great, but what I need to do is I need to talk to even just folks in the history department, right? Which I had never considered for some reason, right? But then also people in the computer science department, right? Folks that work outside of academia that maybe do things that you find inspiring. So I have a friend that says, well, actually go see an art exhibit, right? And connect with artists, right? Go to a poetry reading. If you connect to literature, right? Go to a poetry reading and surround yourself with people both inside and outside of academia that you might, that you find inspiring, so that you can take kind of how they move through the world and figure out how you want to move through the world.
I also think in terms of like alt-act careers, I said before that I'm not a pre-modernist and I work at a center that does that kind of work. But it's because, I guess the advice that I would give is like find a place whose mission is in line with your personal values. Because I don't think it necessarily matters if you spend 40 hours a week doing the exact same thing that your research or your creative work is. But I do think that it can be sort of soul-sucking to do something for 40 hours a week that you are not personally aligned with in a philosophical and political way. And so I think just addressing that word sustainable career in academia is maybe not the first job you can get in academia. The sustainable one is the one that is most aligned with who you are and who you care to be.
Yeah.
So in addition to mentorship and mission, I would say also take stock of the transferable skills that you already have, and see what you like to do. Because sometimes you end up in a position where a lot of that work doesn't align. So a lot of what I tell students when they're going out onto the job market or they're going into grad school is, what do you like to do? Because you don't want to be stuck in a master's program or in a job where what you're doing every day doesn't align with the things that add value to you and you find inspiring. So if you don't have those areas of transferable skills, go talk to people that do. How did they end up there? That's a really nice way to bridge outside of disciplines, but within the university. So is it research administration that you need to talk to? Is it someone who's working in a more sort of developmental role that you'd be interested in transferring to? So even outside of discipline, like in a university, there are a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And some of those you might find personal to your reporting outside of any sort of disciplinary specificity. As long as you got good mission and good mentorship as well, like was already mentioned.
No, I think a lot of people have talked about what I wanted to say as well. I would say you need to kind of think of why academia itself. We're not going to be making banks here, let's be honest. But the reason that I'm in this position for as long as I have is the opportunity to gather this knowledge. This is the knowledge production side here at ASU. We have a lot of opportunities to go out and listen to different talks, different events that are happening, even if it has nothing to do with my own research. And that's what I like about this. And I have this flexibility to venture my own research, and even listening to different talks that are completely different. Like, for example, slavery in Southeast Asia. I mean, I'm from Southeast Asia, but that's not really my realm of research, but you can still connect to your own research. This underprivilege and how culture is so fluid, and how nations are fluid. So these are the type of the knowledge that I get just by being there at these events. And so I will have to say, what do you value most? And if knowledge is something that you're seeking and you have an affinity to it, academia is the place. And to be sustainable, everyone is saying, that you really have to like what you're doing here. Yes, sometimes it's really stressful. There's a lot of responsibility that you need to do in a day. But at the same time, I have this, this thought in the back of my head that I can do other things too. That there's a flexibility of me to do my own research and make my own knowledge and produce my own knowledge. That for me is valuable. So I would say if you want to sustain a career in academia, you really have to kind of think about your own values and what you really want to do in your life. So I think that's what I have to say.
Beautiful. I just, because we're talking about values, I have to plug this again. So this is a freely available online by Hannah Albert Abrams. It's called Finding Your Purpose, a workbook for justice-oriented scholars in an unjust world. And it is literally, you go through it and some of the things that y'all were talking about, right? You go through and you figure out where your values are and where that might lead you in higher education. So for anyone that is out there just starting in their career, you're an early career professional, you're in graduate school, this kind of workbook and other things like it that are out there are really amazing resources.
Yeah.
I don't know what time it is, so I have a question. As sort of newly minted leadership in a center, I'm really glad to hear all these perspectives. And I'm curious, though, we've talked a lot about making sure that the sort of mundane work is valued, but I also am wondering about the value of the research and the more kind of professionalization work that you do. Because when you look at job descriptions and when you look at the way that even if your immediate leadership values that, above that, you get evaluated. Maybe my perspective is wrong. That's why I'm asking. But it seems like sometimes for staff, the attitude is, here are your staff responsibilities, and then if you want to and can manage it, you can do a little research too, right? You can do these other things too, but I guess I'm wondering, what kind of credit and acknowledgement do you get for doing that work? And how do you see it articulating with how the university sees your contributions?
Everybody looked at me. So I'm very happy to go, but I want to make space for Erica too, if you'd like to. I'm happy to go, Erica, but if you'd like to.
The way that a lot of value is conveyed at the level of staff is much different than that. I find value and recognition in helping to develop the course of research and the research programming, sort of the dimensions of what it is that we're focusing on in the center. I find a lot of personal gratification in that. That's something that I really enjoy, and I get recognition for it on the website. I get recognition from all of you. I get recognition in the annual report. So on top of the sort of staff recognition, I feel like in addition to that, I get research recognition. But I'm not sure if I answered that in the way that you were looking for. So I will kick it over to Liz or someone else on the panel.
And my perception might be wrong. My perception might be incorrect. That's why I'm asking.
No, that was such a good question, Sarah. And thank you, Erica. I'll take it. Thank you for kicking us off. So I think I could tell some stories about spaces that I've been in, right, that have not necessarily recognized or made time for me to do my own research. I've been incredibly lucky throughout my career that I've had amazing supervisors. But sometimes my position description does not have research development for myself in it. And that was changed as quickly as possible once I made that a career goal that I communicated. But I've had moments in which I've had to take time, literal vacation time, so that I could write a grant, right? That I wanted to submit as a PI. And stuff like that, right? So I do have stories like that, but the stories usually end with, if I communicate to my supervisor that this is something that I want to do, my position description changes. That's not true for all staff that wants to do research. I have been very, very lucky. And so I think it's kind of a talk to your supervisor about your career goals, and if the response is iffy, then maybe it's time to kind of assess what your goals are, right? And how you can grow in the role in the way you want to. I'm being very politic about this, but I hope that the communication is getting across, right? I think that it goes back to what do you want to spend your time outside of the 8 to 5 position doing? Sometimes I want to write a paper on the weekends, and that is because it's something that I find I'm impassioned about. In my current job, I could do that during the work week if I wanted to. In previous jobs I've had, maybe that would have been a little bit harder, right? Because the job duties took over that 8 to 5 time. So again, I don't think I answered your question, but maybe I got a little too honest.
Yeah, I think I might be less politic about this than Liz,
Cool.
but I think that is my nature. I think when we talk about value and when we talk about recognition, what we're really talking about are 3 things. We're talking about money, we're talking about time, and opportunities, right? And I think that recognition is more than a verbal thing. And I think that it is manifested in action. And whether that be through working with higher administrators to create opportunities for those staff members, how do you promote the work of your staff to the dean? How do you promote the work of your staff even to the provost, right? How do you make that sort of, as a leadership, in a leadership role, you are a conduit of information between staff and administration, right? And how do you make that knowledgeable? How do you make those opportunities available? And how do you create either temporal or monetary flexibility for your staff in order to do the work that they want to do? And I think those are hard questions because they're not baked into most job descriptions, into the culture of academia, and it's change that would have to be on the hands of leadership, right? And that's difficult, sort of barking up trees.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Leah, that was amazing. I think that also, I'll just really quickly add, so it's very easy to say things like, oh, well, all staff that want to do research, their position description officially states that somewhere between 5 and 20% of their time is devoted to research, right? That's a really hard ask for any staff position, but maybe that's the kind of discussion we should start having, right? So that I took that really beautiful thing you just said and made it very practical. So maybe we should end with the beautiful, which was recognition is manifestation in action. Thank you, Leah.
I think this is a perfect note to end on, and thank you all so much for this inspiration, everyone for being here in person, online, and we hope you'll continue to be a part of the conversation.
Thank you, Jake.